Good morning. It's weird to be standing here. It's been a while. Well, this morning, for those of you who are relatively new or visiting with us today, set a bit of context. So I've not been around for a while. And if you've been coming to PCC for the last 3 months, you're probably wondering who I am. I've been on sabbatical since March this year, and just got back last week, back into the office, and my first Sunday speaking, but I was here last Sunday just being a part of the service. And so this morning I just wanted to do a bit of a show and tell from my sabbatical, because lots of people have been asking me different questions on what I did and how it was like, and so I got lots of photos and lots of stories to tell you this morning, and hopefully that will give you a good summary. And I'm still processing stuff from my sabbatical, particularly from the pilgrimage walk that we did, and still unpacking things that God is saying to me. And so you'll probably hear more about that as I kind of understand some of those things, and I'll share them with you as we go. So today is kind of like the high level, highlight reel, if you like. And to set it in a broader context, I went on sabbatical because I was really not in a good place. I preached a sermon in May saying I am not okay, and today I can say I am better than I was, which is really good. I'm in a much better place, and the sabbatical did all of what I was hoping it would do and I wanted it to do, and probably what you were hoping it would do and what you were praying for it to do. And so I want to thank you for your prayers. I want to thank you for your generosity in releasing me not to be around for 3 months. That's a big ask of a church, and I appreciate that you did that. I want to thank the elders and the board for releasing me and making it possible for me to be on sabbatical, and for just the support that I've received, and the encouraging texts and the prayers, and it's just been so lovely. And again, I'm reminded what an honor and a privilege and a joy it is to lead God's people at PCC. Yes, it has its difficult seasons and its ups and downs, but you're a lovely bunch of people. Somebody I was talking to, who was visiting, all the guest speakers that come here, they say, you've got good people in your church. It's a great church. I go, yeah, it is, isn't it? And so thank you, for being a part of this great church and making it a great church. Because it's not just about Dash and me or the elders and the board. It's us. We are the body of Christ. We are the church. We are the physical expression of the heart of God in this community. And so I'm just so blessed and grateful to be a part of this community. So let me just, tell you a little bit about what I've been up to in the last little while. If I can get this to work from here. Oh, there we go. So the first thing I did when I started my sabbatical, the day or 2 days after Easter Sunday, as I went to a cottage owned by a retired ministry couple in Blackheath that make it available for pastors to come on retreat. And I spent a few days with them, and it was just fantastic. I did bushwalks in the Blue Mountains, and on that first day when the sun was out and it was shining, and you'll remember because the rest of that week the rain came, and a lot of rain came that week, and so which was awesome because the waterfalls were overflowing. That's Bridal Falls, I think it's called. And it was just spectacular being out there. But then the rest of the week, I was stuck indoors, which was awesome. And there was a log fire, blankets, and it was just me, my Bible, my journal, the log fire, and just sitting there watching the rain. And it was just phenomenal. It was just so restful and quiet, and there was nobody there. And there was nobody there, and there was nobody there, and it was just really quiet, and it was just fantastic. So that was pretty much the first week, and then I came back, and so this summarizes, so I've kind of put down a word for each stage of my sabbatical, so it kind of gives you a bit of a picture of what was happening in that time. So part of the sabbatical as a whole was just connecting. So I spent time doing lots of stuff with Dash. We did some stuff with the kids. We ate a lot. I tried malatang for the first time, which was pretty awesome. And we just did lots of fun things. Went horse riding with the kids, which was pretty cool. And we did, so that was leading up to our sabbatical Camino pilgrimage walk. So Dash and I did a lot of training walks to just get ready, our bodies in gear for the Camino pilgrimage. So we walked lots of different, and then we walked after we came back as well, because we want to keep the discipline of walking. And I highly recommend it and encourage walking. Not just good for your heart, and my nurses told me that I need to be walking every day at least 40 minutes, which I don't do, unfortunately. I bike ride and do other things, but walking is great just to think and to pray and to slow down and to notice and to observe and all of those benefits. So I highly encourage walking. So we did a lot of that. We caught up with friends for meals, friends that we don't often get to see, other ministry friends, particularly because it's hard to line up calendars with other pastors when you're a minister as well. But, you know, I had time. And so I'm like, yeah, I can fit in with your schedule. Whenever you're free, I'm free. You know, and so that was really great, being able to catch up with them and to encourage them and to be encouraged by them. So we did a lot of that. We went to Vivid. It's not working. I think it's maybe, there we go. Malatang, you see Malatang. We went to Vivid, and yeah, we just did lots of different things, and it was just lots of hiking. And then we got to the Camino. So we went, for those of you who don't know, the Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage walk. It's the second most famous pilgrimage walk in the world, second only to the Vatican as a holy site. And St. Peter's Cathedral. The reason being that supposedly the Apostle James's body is buried at the Cathedral de Santiago. I don't think the evidence is convincing biblically, but a lot of Catholic people go there. A lot of people make that pilgrimage. And the reason it became so popular is that after the Reformation in the 1500s, when the Catholic Church had Martin Luther question the Catholic Church about a lot of things. The pilgrim pathways from parts of Europe to Rome kind of got neglected. And people just weren't using them because in the Reformation, like, well, we don't need to go to Rome now. We've been liberated by the gospel. And so it just fell into disrepair and wasn't as safe anymore. So people just then kind of, all the Catholic people living in that part of Rome needed somewhere else to go. And they went, oh, well, let's go to Spain. And it's closer, and it's, and so then that developed as a pilgrimage site. And so it's still, and that's been really, really well maintained. There's plenty of cafes and places to eat along the way, and it's really well signposted, plenty of places to stay. And the full pilgrimage walk begins in France and goes for about 800 and something kilometers and takes about a month to do if you want to do the full thing. We did not do that. We did just the last leg of the pilgrimage walk, which starts in a place called Sarria in Spain. And we walked 117 kilometers over 9 days. And just in case you're wondering, no, we did not carry all our luggage with us like the true pilgrims do. We booked a company that would transport our luggage from place to place. And so we just had a day pack with our water and raincoats and snacks and other stuff, first aid kit. And we just walked from one town to the next town where we would then stay the night. Our luggage would have arrived, and then we'd spend the night there and then get up the next morning and walk again. The longest day we did was about 17 kilometers, which was hard. That was a really hard day. But, there were others who were like, okay, well, we have to keep going now because we're walking 25 or 30 kilometers. So we'll see you never again because, and we're like, oh, thank you, Jesus, that we're just walking 17 kilometers. But yeah, if you're going to do the full pilgrimage walk, you're averaging probably about 25 to 30 Ks a day, which was just beyond us to do. And so it was just incredibly beautiful. And the Camino experience for me was really about unlearning. It was just an opportunity for God to just strip away a whole bunch of different things that, were just ways of thinking. And one of the most profound lessons I learned, and I remember preparing for the Camino because, it was a pilgrimage walk and I wanted to get the most out of it. And if you know me, I'm a bit of a like an outcomes-driven kind of guy. I want to kind of get the job done. You tell me what needs to happen. You tell me what the problem is, and I just want to fix it. I'm that kind of person. That's how I'm wired. A little bit of a high achiever kind of person. I just want to get it right. And so even with the pilgrimage, it was like, I got to get this right. And so I was talking with my supervisor before I went, and I was talking with other pastors and go, oh, you've done it. Like, what's the key? What's the secret? How do I need to get in the right zone to get God to kind of speak to me? And, it's putting all this pressure on myself to just get it right. And so for the first few days of the pilgrimage walk, that's what I was doing. I'd get up, I'd have my devotions, I'd be reading my Bible and praying and go, God, I'm ready today, for you to speak to me, for you to do what you're supposed to do on this pilgrimage walk for me. I've done my bit. Now come on, God, you got. And I was just and I get to the end of the day and go, nothing happened. Like, where's this bolt of lightning that was meant to come? And I fall down on my knees and, this revelation, and none of that happened. And I was like, man, it's day 3 now, and I'm kind of going, it's getting close to the end. And what if I get to day 9 and nothing's happened? I've failed, like I missed something. I didn't, do all the right things. And that's what was going on in my mind but on day 3, God kind of just really confronted me about that and said, you're so kind of wired for this outcome that you're missing all the things I'm doing and showing you and giving you. And it felt like the Lord just said, just relax already. Just let go of that and just be with me and just notice the things that I want you to see and the things I want you to experience, and receive them as gifts of grace from my hand, and not just have your own expectations of what this experience is meant to be like. And I was like, oh, that hurt so much. And I was like, okay. So from day 4, I was like, okay, God, I'm just going to get up and I'm just going to walk and just notice and just observe the beauty in the world around me, and just enjoy the food that I was eating, and just the people I was meeting and the conversations I was having, and just being in the moment and being present to God and being open to all of the things that God was doing that I was just missing because I was wanting something different. I was wanting God to turn up the way I wanted him to turn up. I was trying to manipulate and control God by all the things I was doing to get him to do what I wanted him to do. And I just kind of had to get to the point of saying, God, I just want you to be God now. You just be God. You just do your thing. And if you turn up in some obvious way, awesome. But if you don't, then help me see how you're turning up in all the unobvious ways. And that was such a huge shift. And from that point on, the walk was so different. I started taking photos of rocks and flowers and ferns and stuff because I was slowing down. And I started noticing things. And so Dash would kind of be walking ahead and going, where's he gone? And I'm just there, taking a photo and, of this little flower that was growing out of these rocks and stuff. And I was just like, wow, there's so much beauty in the ordinary that we miss because we're just so busy trying to get to the next thing. And it just was challenging and unlearning. And learning to just let go and be present with God. Another lesson I learned was to kind of see life as a pilgrimage, and learning the lessons of simplicity and adventure and uncertainty, and being open to what might happen along the trail and the experiences that are there, and learning to find my way and navigate from A to B and to get somewhere that I needed to go. Learning to carry your own burdens, as it were. Like whatever you need, the essential things, and really thinking about how much of other stuff do I really want to be carrying with me, and trying to offload all the, the excess baggage, as it were, and just walk simply. The importance of pushing through challenges when it got really hard, just going, okay, we just need to get to the top of this hill, just need to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going, because we will get there if we just don't give up. Learning those lessons of, pushing through the hard times, and the importance of rest and self-care, and how, important it is to look after your feet when you're walking long distances, and to rest well when you get to your accommodation at the end of the day, and not busying yourself doing a whole bunch of things, but actually resting and making most of the downtime. So lots of really, really, important things that I learned along the way that apply to life and ministry actually as a whole. the importance of trusting God, and receiving God's gifts of grace in the moment. We had spectacular weather. I mean, you'll notice, other than early morning fog, and it was cold, even though it was heading into the European spring, it was 6 degrees in the morning when we started walking sometimes. And so we'd start the day with beanies and gloves and jackets and layers. And then as we went, stuff started coming off and going into the bag. And then we ended up sometimes just, in just T-shirt, or, it's just so sunny and warm. And then we talked to other pilgrims, and there was a school group that was doing the pilgrimage. And they said that the teachers were saying that last year they brought another school group from Ireland, so they're used to the cold. But they said that it rained every day of the 9 days that they walked. And I was thanking Jesus, saying, oh God, if that was me, I would never want to do a pilgrimage walk again. But these teachers were back with a different group of students, and they were walking around saying, this is awesome, look at the sun, it's shining. I go, I understand, because you had it so tough last year. And they said, but it was such an important learning experience for the kids. And I'm like, they can have it. I'm learning plenty in this trip. I don't need rain to teach me anything. So we were just so thankful for the blue skies, and just the beauty that was there. We walked through farmlands and forests and little villages and hamlets, and it was just spectacular. And like I said, it's really well set up. The roads and the pathways are all kind of smooth. They're not kind of uneven. There were some cobblestone and uneven sections, but most of it was pretty easy walking. But it was just really, really beautiful. We met lots of pilgrims, other pilgrims along the way. So that group is all Aussies that we met. And, like people say when they're traveling, you start talking and others go, hey, you're an Aussie. Or, you hear other people and go, hey, they're Aussie, And so we just connected up, and a couple of them live in Sutherland, in Sydney, and another lady in that bottom one in the brown sweater, she lives in the Shire as well. And we caught up with her actually on Friday. And so just building these new connections and relationships. And one of the really cool things was I got to share the gospel with about 3 of them at different points, because one of the biggest questions that everybody asks everyone you meet is, why are you here? Why are you doing this pilgrimage? What's your reason? And so it was just an opportunity for me to talk about where I've been and, the season I was in, and just talk about the Lord and talk about, Jesus. And it was just, and the guy in the glasses, it was the conversation I had with him about God was towards the end. We were sitting around in a cafe at the end of the day's walk. And he was with another guy, and we were just talking about work, and I asked him why he was doing the pilgrimage, and he said, he got made redundant from a job he was doing for 30 years or something. He's trying to now figure out what's next. I don't know. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a pastor. And this guy in the glasses was like, you're a pastor? And I thought, oh, hello, what's going on here? He said, that's amazing. He said, because I've got all these questions I want to ask you. I'm saying, okay. He said, because, everyone's been asking me, why are you doing this pilgrimage? And I've been saying, I don't know. And he's like, I want to ask about, the bigger questions of life and the meaning of life. And so we're having this great conversation about, the meaning of life and Jesus' place in that. And it was just awesome. So God was just at work and opening up opportunities just to show his love. And it was just such a wonderful privilege to be a part of the pilgrimage experience, not just for myself, but for other people as well, and pointing them to Jesus and making it more of a spiritual experience for them as well, even though they might not have started that way. So that was really quite exciting. And so, like I said, we ate a lot. I came back from the Camino and the holiday, and I went straight into my cardio rehab test the week after. And the nurse gave me such a hard time because I put on 4 kilos. And she measured my stomach and compared it to before. And she's like, it's 4 inches bigger. What have you been doing? I just came back from holidays. Give me a chance. She goes, you got to get it off. I go, okay. She said, everything else is good, but you've put on 4 kilos. I'm like, oh my goodness, all right. So, and you can see where the 4 kilos came from. So, and the thing in the middle there, it's called the Santiago cake. Santiago cake? And it's like an almond kind of cake, and it's their signature, one of the signature dishes. They had it everywhere. And the cross there is called the Santiago cross. And again, you see that. If you've ever seen someone doing a pilgrimage, they carry a little shell with them, and that cross is on the shell to mark them as a pilgrim. So And yeah, we did a lot of relaxing. So paella, everyone was asking, did you eat paella? Like, we had lots. That's just one of the photos of the paella we ate. And then the one on the bottom right is called pulpo, which is octopus, which again is a signature dish of the Galician region where we were at. Amazing. And then they had enchiladas and empanadas and what is it? Empanada and Spanish omelette. And then we got to Portugal. Don't even get me started with the tarts. I mean, the Portuguese tarts. There was a lot of tarts. Even the pizzas were amazing. Everything was just fabulous. Lots of eating. Pan de chocolat, which is chocolate croissants, which was awesome. And so when we got to the end, we just spent time relaxing, journaling, processing the day, what's God's been saying and doing in our hearts during the day. And that was just really, really good time to kind of distill into our hearts the things that we'd noticed, the things we'd observed, and reflected on that. But, doing it in amazing environments and just the scenic beauty around us was just such a gift of God's grace. And then we made it. We made it to Santiago de Compostela. That's the cathedral. That's inside the cathedral. We went to the Pilgrim's Mass, which again was just an incredible experience of just, like I was saying to the other people that I've talked to already, that there was just this incredible sense of joy and delight in achieving this incredible thing, because some people had walked the 800 kilometers to get there. So people are arriving all different times, all different days. And when you sit in the big square where we're sitting there in the middle, you hear these shouts going up as different people come in, because they're celebrating that they did it, they made it. And there were big groups coming in, school groups, young groups, old groups, friends, and they would just cheer one another. And it was just this incredible experience of achieving something. And there was also in my heart just a real sense of heaviness and sadness, because I realized that a lot of these people are doing it as a way of salvation. Because for them, it's like, this is to honor God, or this is to earn my forgiveness, or, it's a pilgrimage because I need to suffer and endure, because that is the pathway to make myself right with God. And I'm just thinking, they just don't know the gospel, And in the old days, the pilgrims used to carry all their burdens on their back as a symbol of their sin, and they would bring it to the cathedral on a special holy day, and then they would have the mass, and then they would walk another 100 kilometers to the place called the end of the earth, which is there, or the end of the earth, which is the furthest point of land before you hit the ocean. And so in the olden days, they thought that's as far as the world went. That was the end of the earth. And they would take all their burdens there, and then they'd burn it. And they'd take off their clothes, they'd bathe in the water as a sign of, kind of leaving behind their old life, of cleansing, and then they'd put on new clothes and walk all the way back. And that was their idea of, okay, now I'm forgiven. Now I have this new life. That's what they had to do to feel that sense of forgiveness. And I'm like, wow, how sad that they're carrying this sense of, I've got to do all of this to earn God's love and His forgiveness. And they just don't understand the grace. And it was just heartbreaking. I'm going, yes, there's that sense of achievement, because it's not just about finishing a physical task. You think you've now earned something with God. That's why you're celebrating and rejoicing so much. But you haven't. You haven't, because it's only through Jesus. And so that was really kind of a confronting experience. And then we spent some time in Lisbon and in Porto in Portugal, eating lots of tarts and sightseeing. And we did bus tours and walking tours, and loved the architecture and the history of those cities and those countries. And again, one of the things we really appreciated was that the tour guides could acknowledge the painfulness of the past, of the Crusades, of political dictatorships, of all kinds of things, but also see how a lot of good came out of those really painful times too. Sometimes when we look at history, we just want to reduce it down to something just exclusively good or something exclusively evil. But they were able to kind of see, and I think that's wonderful, that life and history is often a mix of both. There's a lot of bad, yes, even in the church. And, they talked freely about, the Crusades and the Moor campaign where the Muslims came in invading Europe, and how the Crusaders came down and were trying to defend the faith, and a lot of terrible things that happened. But they were saying, but thank God for the Crusaders, because they were defending the faith. And Christianity and Catholicism still has such a strong foothold in Europe because of the work of the Crusaders. And, just being able to hold that tension when they look at history. And I think that's really, really important, and it was good. So we enjoyed that. One of the, lots of highlights, we caught bullet trains, and that was an awesome first experience of traveling at 395 kilometers on a train per hour, which was awesome. One of the big highlights for me was the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Europe, and you can go to the Sagrada Familia, which is this massive cathedral that was built by Gaudi. He started it, a famous architect, and it's still being built. It's been 200 years in the building, and they're still building it. And they're saying it'll probably take another 40, 50 years before it's actually finished. But his vision for the cathedral was that it tell the story of Jesus. And he's got different facades for the Nativity, for the Passion, and it's just phenomenal. And just a bit of trivia, it's one of the only depictions of Christ on the cross where Christ is naked, as it is biblically. Every other depiction, because it was so informed by, Catholicism and, art, is Jesus is always covered, right? Any crucifixion, but the Bible says that he was naked. Gaudi dared to sculpt Christ naked, and he got a lot of pushback. There was a lot of controversy around it, but it's just so powerful. And the inside of the cathedral is just spectacular, with stained glass windows where the light just comes in. And again, he thought of every detail. It's just so profound that one side of it, all the stained glass is generally all green, signifying life and hope and newness. And then the other side is all red and brown, signifying death. And that's the Passion side and the resurrection side. It's just phenomenal. So I encourage you, if you ever get to see it, or you just Google it. It is really something amazing. Sagrada Familia. And then we visited palaces and churches, and the history and the sunsets were just incredible in Europe. The next thing I did was go to a gathering in Queensland run by the Australian Men's Network. And it was just a men's conference over a weekend. And this really was about learning for me. Like I learned a lot of things about how the brain works, how to manage stress, how to deal with challenging things, how to fall upwards, which is one of the other workshops. Really, really helpful, practical things. But the things, again, that stood out for me was just hearing powerful stories of brokenness, of men who just been broken by life, by broken marriages, by kids who didn't want to talk to them. And sadly, there were many men there who'd been broken by the church, who just not experienced love and grace and acceptance in the church, who felt that the church hadn't been a safe place for them to talk about their struggles, to be open and real and not feel ashamed. And it just really confronted me, and it made me all the more determined to make PCC a safe place, not just for men, but for everyone, which is why in our Connect groups, we have such a emphasis on transparency and accountability and being real, because I don't want to go to a conference and hear that people feel like they can't talk in their church because they might get judged. And so they don't talk, and it breaks them. And they have to go to an organization that's a para-church organization or loosely associated with the church to feel like it's safe for them to talk about their brokenness. It ought not to be. And so I was challenged by that. And I love the fact that even this week in our Connect group, when we broke up into guys and girls groups, we were, the guys were standing and we were sitting and sharing our prayer requests. And we did that, and at the end of that time, one of the young guys said, "Look, can we just take this up a notch?" And I kind of went, "Sure." And he said, "Can we just talk about how our relationship with God is going?" I'm like, whoa, all right. He said, "Can we just get real?" I go, "Absolutely." And it wasn't me. It was one of the other young guys in the group saying, I want more than just to talk about my prayer request for this week. I want to talk about what's going on inside of me, and that I'm struggling and I need encouragement and I need prayer. And I thought, yes, this is what church ought to be about. Not where we hide and pretend because we feel that we might be judged or ashamed, but that we feel safe to say, can we just be real with each other? So that was a really learning experience for me. And I learned how important it is to get out of my head. And so, and enjoy being present in the moment. So I had, again, a great room with an amazing view of the mountains. I had a whole bunch of time on my own to sit having coffees at a cafe. I spent about 6 hours at a cafe, my longest stint at a cafe. And I made sure I bought things in the 6 hours so I wasn't ripping them off. And they were lovely. They said, no, don't worry. I said, no, I know that I don't want to take advantage. I'm going to buy things throughout the day. So I spent a lot of money at the one cafe. But it was just wonderful because it had a water view, and I loved just sitting there and just journaling and praying and being with God. It was amazing. But I learned the importance of getting out of my head, because my personality is I'm an internal processor. And a lot goes on here, even when my body is doing other things. And one of the things that they did at the men's gathering is beat drums. Like they always talk about hugging trees and beating drums. Well, it's true. They beat drums. And I was going, why do they do this? And it was fun. Like, it was awesome. Like, everyone had a djembe and we were all just going for it and having a good time. People started dancing and stuff. And then one of the facilitators explained it. He said, look, if you're new and you've never experienced this, the reason we do it is because men generally tend to be internal. And we do it so that they get out of their head and they connect with their body and they connect with something that they're doing. They connect to the sound. They connect to the rhythm of doing something physical. And I went, that's great, because it really did help. It helped me just focus on drumming, just that physical act of being present in my body. And so I learned the importance of doing that. And so that was really helpful as well. I was reminded how loved I am by God. And that just kept coming up in the themes of the conference and the different sessions. And seeing his faithfulness to bring me through the challenges of the last 3 years. Just recognizing and seeing God's hand in the mystery and the hiddenness of the last 3 years. And that was really a profound kind of moment for me. Tasmania, I went there for about a week. This is not in June, towards the end of my time. And that week was about adventure. It was just fantastic. And so again, like I was in a town called Sheffield, which is kind of inland from Launceston and Devonport. If you can imagine, like a triangle, it's right there. And it was about 40 minutes to an hour from Cradle Mountain. And so that's my cottage, and that was the view I had. I looked out of my kitchen window and I could see sheep grazing in the morning, and it was north facing, so I could see both the sunrise in the morning and the sunset in the evening. It was just fantastic, and I was alone. And I was alone. And it was not lonely, because I was alone with Jesus. It was just fabulous. It really was. I mean, I love Dash and I love my kids, and I'm not saying anything about not enjoying her company, but it's different when you're alone with God. You can't escape him. And that's what this week was like, it just God kept coming, and that intensified from this point on, because the next thing I did was the Abbey, the silent retreat, and this was a good precursor to that, because that was a whole different thing. And I learned again a lot of really interesting things in this time. I enjoyed again the creation, God's beauty and creation everywhere. I did a lot of reading and journaling and worshiping. This was a busy few days. So I hiked around Dove Lake. I climbed to Minnow Falls, which are all there. I went to Devonport and spent time walking along the beach, along the waterfront. I climbed to Marion's Lookout, which was a hard climb. It's probably one of the hardest climbs I've done. It was, I think, about half a kilometre just uphill, like just going uphill. And it wasn't an easy path. It was like rocks, and you had to kind of scramble and and I was going, what am I doing here? And the problem I discovered was in Tasmania, the cottage I was staying in is owned by another ministry mentor who specializes in, pastors' health and recovery from burnout and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I met with him every day, which was amazing because I learned a lot from him. It's just a wonderful, godly blessing to me that week. He's really into adventure. Like, he's a hiker, he's a trekker. Like, he hiked across Tasmania with his wife from the north, in Devonport, all the way down to Hobart. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I made the mistake of asking him, are there some great trails that I can do? He said, oh yeah, he said, this is probably an easy one that you can do. I'm like, okay. He said, oh yeah, it'll probably take you maybe a couple of hours. And I go, oh, okay. He said, yeah, it's uphill, but you'll be all right. I'm like, what? This was intense. Look, I had to go up ladders like that. I was like, and I had to go through a cave and stuff. I'm like, and this is an easy walk? Don't give me a hard one. It'll kill me. It was intense, but and there was so many points along the way when I thought, I'm gonna stop here. I'm just gonna, there was several places on the waterfall, different places where you can view it, 3 different places. And I got to the first one, I go, oh yeah, that's enough. I'll go back. And then there was other people that came up and they said, oh, you're gonna go to the next one? I'm like, nah, don't be silly. I'm not gonna go to the next one. And they're like, but it could be really good. And I go, yeah, but, and then, I'm looking and the trail looks like it gets, so that ladder is in the second part. And it looks like it's even more intense. And when I was talking to him, he said, oh, it's a really cool walk because you get to go up rope ladders and go through a cave and stuff. And it sounded all great, but I hadn't done any of that. And so I'm going, oh, so I wonder if that's in the next section. I go, I don't want to miss out. What if it's really amazing? And so I go, oh, okay, I'll go to the next one. It's only 15 minutes. And it was crazy, but the view was spectacular. That's from the top there. And I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't quit when it was hard, because I would have missed out on seeing this. And that was such a powerful moment for me. It's like going, sometimes we turn back just before that moment when it was like, oh, this is just phenomenal. And so that was a moment where I'm like, okay, God, there'll just be hard things in life. It's just going to be hard. That's just life. But sometimes you just have to push through the hard stuff to get to the good stuff. And so that was an amazing time. And I learned so many lessons about, so I walked up to Marion's Lookout in Cradle Mountain as well. And I learned the importance of being prepared, having the right equipment, getting good advice from people. Because when you're going in the wilderness, anything can happen. And just being properly equipped. And life's a bit like that. And ministry is a lot like that. And just having good people around you to advise you and give you wisdom was a really helpful life lesson. Now, I know you all want to hear about Jamboree. So mountain biking, I got to do some mountain biking, spent a whole day on a mountain bike, which was phenomenal. And like I said, the sunsets and the sunrises, spectacular. A lot of people have been asking me about Jamboree, so I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about Jamboree, and then I want to kind of finish you off because we're running out of time. So the Jamboree was the last thing I did on my sabbatical, and it was a silent retreat, but it wasn't a directed silent retreat. So the difference between a directed silent retreat and what I did is that a directed silent retreat is organized by somebody else, and there's a set program of how you're meant, of things you do in that retreat, and often it goes for a weekend or a day. I did what they call a self-directed silent retreat, where it was really up to me to set my own rhythm for the day or the week and my own program of what I wanted to do. And so I went in there again with all kinds of agendas of how I wanted to do things. And I got lots of advice because I'd never done anything like this before. And I spoke to Tim, who was the guy in Tasmania, and said, look, you've done this before. And he's done lots. He does 1 or 2 every year because he says it's just so critical. And he gave me some really helpful things. And I was reading a book, and if you're interested in this spiritual discipline, one of the best books I'm reading, I'm nearly finished, is called An Invitation to Silence and Solitude. And it's just really helpful, practical things that will just give you, it's a very short chapter, and then she gives practical things you can do at the end of the chapter to actually practice and have a go. And one of the things I found hardest on the silent retreat was not being alone, because I was alone. It was not being quiet, because it was easy to be quiet. It was an abbey. It was in the middle of nowhere. That was easy. The hardest thing I found was quietening the noise in my head. And so I had to kind of really learn to discipline the noise inside of me and not rely on my words. That was the other big thing. I'm a verbal guy. Right? I mean, I preach for a living. And so one of the things I found that often I was using my praying to God as a way of distracting myself when I felt uncomfortable being silent. And I would just pray. And it's a good thing. Or I would read my Bible, which is more words. Or I would journal, which is also words. And as I went, I kind of went, okay, I got to just go deeper into this silent experience. And I started off with lots of Bible reading, lots of praying, lots of journaling. But as I went, I kind of went, I'm going to rely less and less on my words and just more and more of sitting and trying to focus and be present to God in just that moment and not be in my head. And it was not till I got there that the next day I really felt God gave me the greatest amount of clarity and confidence and spoke in a lot of ways the things I really needed to hear as part of this whole sabbatical experience. So much clarity about my calling, about my role, about my function as a leader, as a pastor, and what that looks like came once I pushed through that wall of discomfort of not relying on my words and of just being able to sit with God and not do even good things like reading your Bible and praying and journaling. And so it was a really wonderful experience. And again, an incredibly scenic location. I went for walks and just spent time alone with God, and a lot of sitting in the sun, a lot of just being still, of just not doing anything. There was a couple of days when I didn't take my phone, I took off my watch, I didn't want to be governed by technology. Disconnecting was really, really an important part of the process for me, and it was just wonderful. It really was great, and I really encourage you to do that, even if it is for an hour. You know, if you can find a day where you can just be still. Maybe start with just 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just being quiet and bringing yourself before God. So those were some of the challenges I had to kind of push through in this experience. We visited lots of churches, which was really cool, and having different worship experiences was awesome. Just want to finish real quick with 2 lessons that I want to just share with you today. I mean, there was lots, but these were the things that really stood out for me. One is the importance of being present in the present. And Jesus said in Matthew 6:34, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And we learned this, particularly on the Camino, where every day is just focus on today. We just need to finish today. We just need to get through today with our blisters, with our sore feet. We just need to not quit today. We just need to finish today. And just so powerful, because the moment you do that, you begin to experience different things. So one of the things I learned at the men's retreat was that often depression for me, I don't know about you, comes when I preoccupy myself with the past. When I replay the stuff that's happened in the past, and I get just stuck in the past. And it just leads me to an unhealthy place. And then if I focus on and preoccupy myself with the future in a neurotic way, I get anxious. But joy is in the Lord is only found in the present. It's in the here. It's in the now. It's being present in your body and being aware and noticing what God is saying and doing and gifting you right here, right now. But the moment you do that, it changes the way you look at the past, and it changes the way you look at the future. Because now you can look at the past with gratitude, because you can see God's faithfulness in the past. You see how God has met you in the past. You see how God fulfilled his promises to you in the past. Because when you're replaying all the bad stuff, you don't see all that stuff. You miss it. And so being present and trusting the Lord in that, in the present joy and with what God gives you today, the daily manna he gives you, helps you to see the past differently, because you can see the manna he gave you there, and you can trust him for the manna to come in the future. There's hope. And for me, that was such a significant lesson. And I hope that it is for you. The second one is to move from one side of the cross to the other. And Nigel, that was awesome that you mentioned this passage, because this is one of the things that God really profoundly impacted me with. And you know this passage, one of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourselves and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. That was such a profound line, because I don't think any of us think that. I don't think any of us think that. Or we think that we deserve something other than being crucified on a cross. And that's what I think, or I thought. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. The lessons are to move from one side to the other. I've been in the place of demanding salvation like that thief. Jesus, if you are, save me, save yourself, and save me too. Demanding salvation, demanding God's intervention, demanding God's blessing, favor, whatever it is. But the other side of the cross, the thief is pleading for mercy. He didn't even ask for salvation. He just said, remember me. Just remember me. That's all I'm asking. And he says, I'm pleading. Different attitude completely. The thief on the one side is coming from a position of entitlement. You owe me. You should be saving me. But the other thief's like, no, I'm getting what I deserve. He's not getting what he deserves. I'm getting what I deserve. This punishment is due me. That's my entitlement. And so all I have is gratitude. Just, Jesus, save me. Have mercy on me. God, moving from God, you owe me, to God, I owe you, me. I surrender. I owe you everything. That's been one of the hardest lessons. And it was hard because I was ashamed that I was still on that side of the cross. I was on the wrong side of the cross. And I see that in my heart. And I was like, God, that's where I've been. I've been demanding. I've been expecting you to do for me. I've been having this sense of entitlement and not being grateful. And I've not been seeing your mercy as mercy. I've been seeing it as my right, my entitlement. And that was hard seeing that in my heart. And so I'm not saying to you that I've learned these lessons, but these are the lessons I am learning to just make that pilgrimage from one side of the cross to the other. Will you bow your heads with me? Father, I'm so grateful. So grateful for you and your work on the cross to save me from my sin. To save us from our sin. To make us your children. To make us brothers and sisters. To make us a community of worship. And Lord, as we go from here, I pray that you will impress something of what I've said into each heart. A little seed that might bear a good harvest. We entrust ourselves to your grace. I speak your blessing, your peace, your shalom over your people as we go in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. Have a great week. If you'd like prayer, if you're going through something, if you feel God challenging you about something today that you need prayer for and with, we'd love for you to come and we'd love to pray with you. Enjoy coffee outside. Talk to someone, meet someone. There's a few faces that are not familiar to me, and I look forward to meeting them.